Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for joining here in person and on the Zoom. So we will get started. We will continue our deeper discussion on the three lives of Maharaja Bharata, King Bharata. That is the topic for today. And this is the same King Bharata after whom our land is known as Bharatvarsh. So before we start, we will recite the Mangalacharan prayers. So I will share the screen. Okay. Hopefully you can all see the screen. Is it the screen is visible on the Zoom?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay, great. And the audio is okay?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, great. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarini He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, now we will look at we will recite the invocation verses for Srimad Bhagavatam. Is this PowerPoint visible on the Zoom? Anybody?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, great. Thanks. So, our obeisances, our pranams to Sri Shukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, and Sri Suta Goswami and the Rishis of Naimisharanya. Please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Narayanam namaskrityam
Narayanam Namaskritya
Namaskrityam
Naram chaiva narottamam
Naram
Naram
Chaiva
Chaiva
Narottamam
Narottamam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devi
Devim
Saraswati
Saraswatim Vyasam
Vyasam
Tatho Jayam Udirayet.
Tato
Tato Jayam
Jayati
Udire
Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu
Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttamah Shloke
Bhagavatam Uttam Asloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishthiki
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki
Krishnaya Vasudevaya
Krishnaya Vasudevaya
Devaki Nandanaya Cha
Devaki Nandanaya Cha
Nandagopakumaraya
Nandagopa Kumaraya
Govindaya Namo Namaha.
Daya Namo Namaha.
Okay, thank you so much. So you all can mute if you're not speaking, so that will create less static or background noise on the Zoom. So we are discussing this beautiful topic from Srimad Bhagavatam called the 3 lives of Mahārāja Bharata. And this topic is like in our Bhagavatam series, we are going through just various topics. We covered topics before, like the story of Maharaja Ambarish, then Bali Maharaj, who was a devotee of Vaman Dev. We also discussed the story of Ajamil in a lot of details. And similarly, now we are, just before this, we studied the instructions of Lord Rishabhdev, who is the father of Bharata Maharaj. And now we are studying the story of Bharata Maharaj. And Srimad Bhagavatam is a beautiful way of learning about the principles of bhakti through the lives of devotees. So every single episode of Srimad Bhagavatam is about devotees of the Lord and how the devotees express their bhakti. So we get a lot to learn from Srimad Bhagavatam. So as you can see, every story is about some devotee or the other. And this story is about the same devotee, but in 3 different lifetimes. So it spans across 3 lives, and through the Srimad Bhagavatam, we can see how the this devotee, Bharat Maharaj, this soul, this Jivatma, is reciprocating or interacting with the Supreme Lord. In our current lives, we don't know who we were in the previous life or next life, or we don't know who someone else was, like I don't know who Prabhuji was in the previous life. So we cannot map, because he's so devotional. He must have been somebody devotional in the previous life. We don't know that. It is coming from previous lives. The devotional service continues, but we are unable to see that in day-to-day life. So from Srimad Bhagavatam, we can see how the devotion continues from life to life in some of the pastimes, which span across lifetimes. Like there is a story of Narad Muni in the first canto. We see his previous life and then his next life as Narad Muni. So like this, we see across lifetimes, and the principles are the same as Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So here we are looking at the 3 lives, not just 2, but 3 lives of Mahārāja Bharata, where he was a king, a very, very great king in the first life. And then after ruling for a very, very long time, he gives up his kingdom to his children and goes and performs bhakti in the forest, in the ashram of Pulatsya Muni, near the Himalayas, near the Gandaki river. And last week, we were discussing the details. 2 weeks back, we discussed the whole story in a summary. Then we are going into the details. So last week, we discussed how Bharata Maharaja was performing the various activities of bhakti in the forest, in the ashram. And a couple of main important things we saw is that although he was following or performing the various yagyas and sacrifices, sacrifice doesn't mean animal sacrifice. Sacrifice means yagya. So that's called, the English translation is a sacrifice. Though we will see a more kind of a human sacrifice story today, and how that gets thwarted, because that is not recommended in the Vedas. So people can do whatever they want, So anyway, he was doing these worship, these yagyas for the Devis and Devatas. But from the Bhagavad Gita, we see that all the worship that we perform to any of the Devis and Devatas goes towards the Supreme Lord. And how devotees, if they want to worship Devis and Devatas, they should worship. And the example is given through Bharata Maharaj, that in his consciousness, he was very clear that whatever he is, worship he is performing is going to the Supreme Lord. He was doing it with that consciousness, and there was no material motivation that he was expecting in return for that. That is the correct way. If one wants to, if one has some necessity to worship the demigods, that is the process. That's the right process, to have the consciousness that I am through this worshiping the Supreme Lord only, and no material desires in return for the worship. It's not like a business transaction. I give you this, you give me something in return. So like that, we saw that. But what happens is that he gets attached, or he gets attracted to a small baby deer who, takes birth in front of his own eyes. His mother, the deer, the foal, the female deer, dies giving birth to the baby deer, and he thinks that he is the protector of the baby deer. So he starts taking care of the deer, the baby deer, and becomes very attached to it. And over time, he even, his bhakti and his worship and his focus on the Lord also diminishes. So it starts going down and down, and his attachment to the deer starts going up and up. And so since we are only discussing the important parts for our understanding, that are relevant for our own progress in Krishna consciousness, I'm skipping some of the portions. But in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a very, very vivid description of how the transition happens from his devotional service to his attachment to the deer. So one of the last verses, I think, that we read, this is where we left off last time, is how during his worship, his mind was always on the deer. Where is it? Every time he was doing his, closing his eyes, after 5 minutes, he would open his eyes and check, is the deer nearby? If the deer is nearby, then again, he would close his eyes and do devotion. Then again, after 5 minutes, and if he doesn't find the deer, then his mind would get agitated. Where is it? Where? Just like, when we are doing something, but if our children are playing, let us say you're sitting in the park and doing japa, or your child is playing on the play structure. Every 5 minutes, you open the eyes and see if he's there. If he's not there, then, japa becomes the second, third priority. First priority is to. So I'm not saying that child, one should definitely take care of the child, but these are our attachments of family, home, so many things. And the sad part is that Bharata Maharaj had already given up his family. He gave up his children, his family, his wife, his home, everything he had given up consciously that he could give up, and came to the forest. So the purpose for which he came here, after giving up his, so to say, his real family, and coming here, he made a new family. So that is the sad part. to the extent it became like a real family, like how I was giving the example of how we have a real family and we are always, first priority is family first, then bhakti. So he created the infrastructure to do bhakti first and nothing else. But somehow this new family showed up. And it's not like the deer came to him, he went. And there are many devotees, or a common question is, what could he have done? If the deer was just there and the mother had died, should he have just left it? That would be like very hard-hearted. So many possibilities could have been there. The Bhagavatam doesn't describe this, but from the learnings we can understand that he could have taken care of the baby deer to some extent, and then leave it for the Lord to take care beyond a certain point. Even the mother deer doesn't care for the baby forever. The deer parts ways from the parents after some time. Here his attachment to the deer went much longer. Or you can have a deer but not be overly attached to it to the extent that it becomes a hindrance in your devotional service. You can have a deer but treat it like a another living entity. Give it and there is none, you don't even have to give it grass or anything. You are living in the forest, there is plenty of grass, there is plenty of water. He was living near the Gandaki river, so there is no shortage of water, there is no shortage of grass, there is no shortage of anything. So he is the one who gave his attention and his consciousness to the deer. So that was the problem. So anyway, so these are the kind of stones that are found in the Gandaki river. They are known as Shaligram Shilas. And this picture is showing how he was performing devotional service. Then he found this deer. You can see here, he's found the deer, and then he becomes attached to the deer. So all these pictures I just Googled and found on the internet. So you can see here, he's performing his worship, but his mind is on the deer. Where is the deer? So that is the problem. Okay. Then what happens? Finally, like this, time passes away. And time passes away till the time the last moment arrives. Okay, so death arrived for him. And since he had become so attached to the deer was next to him when he was passing away. And what was the last thought that he had in his mind? About the deer. He was so attached, and there are several very poetic verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I can tell you the numbers also, but not very, important in that sense, but how it shows how much Bharata Maharaja was attached to the deer. Oh, it's almost like, some of the other verses in Srimad Bhagavatam where devotees are crying for the Lord. Oh, my Lord, where are you? I can't see you. Please come before me. Devotees are crying for the Lord. Very similar verses, but the context is Bharata Maharaj is crying for the deer. That much was the attachment to the deer. And finally, the last moment arrives, and he leaves his body in the consciousness of a deer. So this is where we will pick up our story today, and we will go into some very, very beautiful verses. Let me see. So yeah. So first point we will discuss is how he is about to leave his body. What happens, what is going on at that time. So this is in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 8, verse number 26. So 5 8:26. So I will share the Veda base now. (26th). Okay. So what we will do is we will read the translation of, this is a very long verse, and as you can see, for some reason I'm not an expert in the Sanskrit or the meter, etc. We got very good association of Hari Parshad Prabhu, who told us the meters and all the deep details. So maybe I will ask him sometime. But my understanding is that much of this chapter is just, the Sanskrit is in a prose format, not in any particular meter. So I don't know how to recite the Sanskrit, but this is a little bit, as you can see, tough Sanskrit as well. We will recite one verse, which is very beautiful, but for this one, we will read the translation. So first we will read the translation. So Prabhuji, can you loudly read the translation?
Sure. Translation. Sukadeva Goswami, my dear king, in this way, Bharata Maharaja was overwhelmed by an uncontrollable desire, which was manifest in the form of the deer. Due to the fruitive results of his past deeds, he fell down from mystic yoga, austerity, and worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If it were not due to his past fruitive activity, how could he have been attracted to the deer after giving up the association of his own son and family, considering them stumbling blocks on the path of spiritual life? How could he show such uncontrollable affection for a deer? This was definitely due to his past karma. The king was so engrossed in petting and maintaining the deer that he fell down from his spiritual activities. In due course of time, insurmountable death, which is compared to a venomous snake that enters the hole created by a mouse, situated itself before him.
Thank you. It's a very heavy verse. So it is saying that, so there are two main things that this verse is saying, or that at least I would like to focus on. The first one is, why did Bharata Maharaj get attached to the deer? He was performing such wonderful devotional service. And we have read so many times that devotional service burns the seeds of material attachment. So how come the material attachment arose once again in the heart and mind of Bharata Maharaj? Seems a little contradictory, isn't it? He performed so nicely bhakti. So that means if we also perform such nice bhakti like Bharata Maharaj, still we can get attached to sense gratification. Then what's the point? Then whatever we have read in bhakti or about bhakti seems a little weak, isn't it? Does that thought come to someone's mind? So that is one thing that, and here the Srimad Bhagavatam has put it, Shukdev Goswami, and as it is said here, Sukadev Goswami continued, has put it in a very concise manner. But our wonderful acharyas like primarily Srila Prabhupada and Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarthy Thakura, who have written detailed commentaries, have beautifully explained the underlying reason. And there are two reasons to answer this question. And the second point is that how treating somehow, due to some reason, we will answer that question, but somehow he got attached to the deer, right? Why he got attached, that's the first part. But let's assume he got attached. Okay. And when one gets attached to our material attachments, family, home, property, whatever, our, so many, our samsara, finally death arrives. We think that it will, give us sufficient notice, 10, 15 years notice. It never gives that much long notice. So finally death arrives, and very gravely it is mentioned here, like a venomous snake that enters the hole created by a mouse. A mouse creates a hole thinking it will live very nicely and happily in that little hole. It also even saves some food or some cheese, whatever, in the hole. And through that same hole, the snake enters and eats the mouse. So that is the second part. So that, we must all think how we are living our life as if, death will never come. So that is a very big reminder. So couple of points to be noted here. For the first one, that why did Bharata Maharaj get attached or entangled with the deer? So there are two aspects to understanding this. One is the basic aspect, the more sort of the introductory aspect, without considering the fact that Bharata Maharaj performed so much Krishna Bhakti. So the point is that Maya is very strong, and our past conditioning, our past attachments can rise up at any time, even though we may curb them through external means like meditation or any kind of yoga. Now, beware, this is the basic understanding. We are all, I'm speaking to very learned devotees who have been in this, discussion for a long time. So the second part will make more sense. But at a more basic level, the point is that one must be ever careful. One cannot become complacent. One can never or should never let their guard down. If it can happen to Bharata Maharaj, it can happen to any one of us. Okay. And the sort of, there are, I would say, three parts, not two, three. So this is the basic understanding. The medium level understanding, the next level of understanding is that, okay, now we understand that Bharata Maharaj performed so much bhakti yoga in his previous days, but he still got attached to the deer, isn't it? That is why now we will see in the next few, and we had covered it in the summary, it was a special deer. What was the special part of the deer? Anybody?
He remembered his past.
Exactly.
Even in the deer.
Even in the deer's body, it remembered who it was. And it led the life of the deer also very carefully. This deer did not get attracted to any female deer or, tried to do sense enjoyment in the body of deer or anything. He ate dry leaves, went to the ashram, same ashram where he was performing as Bharata Maharaj, and led a very controlled life, and then passed away. And then was born in the third life as a Brahmana. Bharat, again, his name was Bharat, but people used to call him Jada Bharat because he was acting like a complete fool. Jad means good for nothing. So, however, so he was a special deer. So it is not that his bhakti that he had done was completely wasted. You don't find such a, deer who remembers the life. Okay, so he was a special deer. And Srila Prabhupada very clearly writes, I'm summarizing parts of the purport or several purports here, that those who fall down after very strong bhakti and they have some fall down, then the Lord gives them little bit of token, suffering. The life or the life of an animal is not a very opulent life. It's, there is some misery in the life of an animal. It's the animal's life, right? But such an animal is born in a holy place, in a sacred place. And what is the benefit of being born in a sacred place? Living in a sacred place. And Srila Prabhupada gives the example of dogs living in Vrindavan. So if you have to be a dog, now even if you don't remember your past life, now Srila Prabhupada even writes that maybe some of the dogs, if you have been to Vrindavan, right? There are dogs, there are monkeys, there are all these animals, even you will see pigs. So some of them may be remembering their past life. We don't know. They will not communicate to you. But even if they don't remember their past life, they have great benefit over there. What is the benefit? Very nice. They have association of devotees. What else? They get to hear the holy name. Yes, everybody, even the rickshawala in Vrindavan says Radhe Radhe. So if a dog is sitting there, he's going to hear the holy name. What else? Very nice, they get to eat the remnants, the prasad. People will eat some, something is left over in the plate, they will throw it. They get to eat prasad. And one last thing, you have mentioned all the nice things. Huh?
They get to walk on the path that Krishna walked in.
Okay, very nice. That's a new one. I mean, not new one, but I hadn't thought about it. Very nice. Yes. Okay. One more thing. Srila Prabhupada writes, for example, if a dog is living in Vrindavan, it gets to bathe in the Yamuna river, right? You might have seen some dogs or something in the Yamuna river. So very nice, you can bathe in the Yamuna river also. So many nice things, even the animals benefit. So, and then after this animal life, depending on where they left off, what was the downfall, they can get a very elevated next life. Just like Bharata Maharaja, he became like a very, in a Brahman family and very, very pious and very good conditions to make progress spiritually. So that is the second level of understanding that you do, there is one, it's not like you have fallen down and you are going down, 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 down. It's just a small token and then you come back up. And then the third point, which is so beautiful and so wonderful, Srila Prabhupada mentions it briefly, and the details are present in the purport by Sri Vishvanatha Chakravarthy Thakura. And I just want to go into a little bit detail into this understanding for the devotees' benefit. I was very, very benefited by reading it, and I want to share with you that there are two types of karma. Especially Sri Vishwanath Chakravarthy Thakur says 2 types of prarabdha karma. One is auspicious and one is inauspicious type of prarabdha karma. One is where the results, prarabdha karma means the results that have accumulated of your past actions that are accumulating. And then they fructify. Like if you have been a chain smoker for 10 years, immediately you don't get cancer. Correct? It keeps building up, building up, building up. After 10 years, you may get cancer or whatever, right? So it is building up. The results of your activities are accumulating. But what is the outcome of those results is more attachment to material sense gratification. And then you start falling down because that is what you have accumulated. A chain smoker wants to smoke more and more and more, and then his cancer keeps increasing more and more and more, and finally he suffers, isn't it? So that is one type of the normal type of prarabdha karma that is called. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarthy Thakur describes it so beautifully. That is not the case with Bharata Maharaj. Not the case. It is not even a token punishment, he says. Not even a token punishment. It's not like he got attached. Why did he even get, you can ask, why did he even get attached in the first place? Even a little bit, so that he would have to receive little bit token punishment. Why? Was his bhakti not enough? how much more bhakti he had to do to not get attached at all, so as to not even receive even little bit token punishment, isn't it? What was the thing? So this is a whole new dimension that is brought out by our previous acharyas. And this is not prarabdha karma, this is swarabdha karma. Swarabdha. What it means is that the bhakti of this kind of a devotee of Bharat Maharaj is not at the full level of prema yet. Little bit is left over. So that is why it is said that Bharat Maharaj is at the level of bhava bhakti. So something is left. And then what does Krishna do? Please understand, this is a very deep point, not applicable for us, definitely not for me. Okay, but I'm just explaining so that we can appreciate and then move on. For me, what applies is the first one. Okay, that Maya is very strong. We have to be ever careful, and we must never let our guards down or become complacent. That is what applies to me, and I would say for many people. This one is the very, very high level of understanding, and for me it is theoretical, but it is given by the acharyas, and it's very beautiful to understand. So his bhakti was little bit less than the highest level of prema bhakti, and therefore the Lord took away the final benefit and gave him one more life of separation. And in that life of separation, his bhakti increased more in separation, so that it came to the level of prema bhakti in the life of Jada Bharata, and he could go back to Krishna. Are you following? So that is the reason given. So there was nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong in what Bharat Maharaj did. In fact, Sri Vishwanatha Chakravarthy Thakura says that at the highest level of understanding, this was the will of the Lord. This was his plan to take him to the highest level. This is how the Lord helped him to go to the final level, the what you may call the last lap, the final leg. Okay. So yeah, he writes that Bharat Maharaja's fall was arranged by the Lord for the purpose of increasing his longing for bhakti after taking birth as a deer and finally as a Brahmana. So that is the, are you following? Is it clear? So this is very, very beautiful understanding. And here, Sri Vishwanath Chakravarthy Thakur quotes this very, very extremely beautiful verse, which I will show you from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Rasa Pancha Adhyaya, where Lord Krishna is having the Rasa Leela with the gopis. And this is a very famous verse where the Lord disappears in the middle of the Rasa Leela. He disappears. And all the gopis become very sad. Where is my Lord? And then after he reappears, he says, I disappeared only to increase your bhakti towards me. Are you following? And that is the verse that Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarthy Thakur is quoting here in this context. That I gave you this life of deer so that your bhakti will increase and you will come to the highest level of bhakti. So very beautiful verse is this one. It is in the 10th canto, 32nd chapter. th verse. So maybe we can recite this verse. So it's a very beautiful verse, very famous verse, where the Lord says that how the bhakti in separation is so much more stronger than bhakti in association. with the Lord. And you all can also see that, love in separation becomes stronger. So we'll recite this very famous verse. It is, as you can see, 10:32-20. Naham tu sakhyo bhajato api jantun bhajamyamisham anuvritti vritye yatha adhano labdha dhane vinashte tachintaya anyan nibhrito na veda. So please, we'll go into the word by word here. Na aham nu sakhyo tu sakhyo bhajato api jantun. So Lord Krishna is telling the gopis, na aham, I do not, sakhyo bhajato, those living entities or those sakhyo or those who are doing the bhajan api jantun, those living entities who are doing the bhajan of me, bhajamya amisham anuvritti vrittaye, bhajami aham. So I reciprocate. If you remember that verse 4.11 in Bhagavad Gita, what is it? Bhajami aham. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam tathaiva bhajami aham. So as one surrenders to me, I reciprocate with him. Bhajami aham. So the same thing, bhajami amisham anuvritti vrittaye. I reciprocate with him. Anuvritti vrittaye, to increase. Vrittaye means to increase their anuvritti, to increase their love. So I do not reciprocate with them. If they are worshipping me, I withhold my reciprocation so that their love can increase for me. Yatha adhano labdha, and here then Lord Krishna gives an example. Yatha means just like, or as an example, yatha, just like, he gives an example of a poor man who had lot of wealth, but then loses it. Then there is lot of pain. When you have something and if you don't even have it, then you feel like, okay, I never had it, it was never mine. But if you had something and then you lose it, then there is more pain, more separation, more like, okay, you want it back more strongly. So that is what is said here. Yatha adhano labdha dhane vinashte. Just like a adhano means a poor man, adhana, who does not have any dhana. After having the wealth, labdha dhane, he had wealth, but vinashte, that became destroyed. That wealth that he had, it became destroyed, and now he has become a adhana. Now he has become poor. Then what happens? Tat chintaya anyan nibhrito na veda. He becomes so chintaya, means so chintit, so anxious, that na anyan nibhrito na veda. That means he does not know anything else. He cannot think of anything else in that anxiety other than how to get back my wealth. So here, this is a very important, very beautiful verse that Lord Krishna says, and this is the same verse that is repeated here by Sri Vishvanatha Chakravarthy Thakura, that is the reason the Lord took away what he could have gone to the spiritual world at the end of that life of King Bharat. But he took away that, he withheld that, gave him 2 more lives. First life of deer, and then life of Brahman. So he delayed what was he was going to get, so that his separation increases from the Lord, with the Lord, and his bhakti therefore increases with the Lord. Is that clear? So this is very beautiful thing I thought was very, very interesting. So let us read the translation of this verse. Prabhuji, please.
But the reason I do not immediately reciprocate the affection of living beings, even when they worship me, O gopis, is that I want to intensify their loving devotion. They then become like a poor man who has gained some wealth and then lost it, and who thus becomes so anxious about it that he can think of nothing else.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So that is the situation. Bharat Maharaj and the life of the deer, his whole consciousness was focused on the Lord. And similarly, as Jada Bharata also, his consciousness was fully focused on the Lord. And then at the end of that life, he went back to Krishna. He went back to the Lord. So this is the this is one thing that I wanted to cover. Okay, then let us complete this chapter. We will read a couple of more translations. And this is the next verse, very beautiful also, the 27th verse, where Mahārāja Bharata finally passes away in the presence of the deer. And it is mentioned that that's why he gets the body of a deer. But this deer is special. He remembers all his activities in the previous life as Mahārāja Bharata. So we won't go into the Sanskrit Anvaya, but we will just read the translation. So maybe somebody, some devotee on Zoom can read it this time. Text number 27. Yes.
Translation is not visible. Yeah, no, it's okay.
Can I read, Prabhuji?
Yes,
Can I
Mataji.
read, Prabhuji? Oh, sorry.
Yes. So
And
we
can-
will be reading 2 or 3 verses. I saw Prabhu Kripa Prabhu also raised the hand. So Mataji, both of you can read one and then Prabhuji.
Okay. Hare Krishna. At the time of death, the king saw that the deer was sitting by his side, exactly like his own son, and was lamenting his death. Actually, the mind of the king was absorbed in the body of the deer, and consequently, like those bereft of Krishna consciousness, he left the world, the deer, and his material body, and acquired the body of a deer. However, there was one advantage. Although he lost his human body and received the body of a deer, he did not forget the incidents of his past life.
Thanks, Mataji. Thank you
Hare
very much.
Krishna.
So here you can see here in the Sanskrit, it is written Saha Mrigena Kalevaram Mritam. That this Mriga means the deer, Saha, it was sitting with the deer was there with him, Kalevaram Mritam. That in that state with the deer next to him, Bharat Maharaj left his body. And then the next part of the Sanskrit is saying that Anuna Mrita Janma Anusmritihi Itaravat Mriga Shariram Avapa. So thereafter, this after the death, after he died, Anu na Mrita Janma Anusmritihi. After the death and after taking birth as a deer, Janma Anusmritihi. He remembered the previous life. Itaravat Mriga Shariram Avapa. He got this body, Mriga Sharira. But in that Mriga Sharira, he remembered he had the smriti of his previous life. So he was a special deer in that sense. And now, next verse, number 28. So, Meera Mataji.
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Although in the body of a deer, Bharata Maharaja, due to his rigid devotional service, in his past life could understand the cause of his birth in that body. Considering his past and present life, he constantly repented his activities, speaking in the following way.
Thank you. So he was repenting his previous life, or the last portion of his previous life. And this is such a, I found this next verse where he is, in one verse, his repentance is being shown. So I want to go into a little bit detail into this verse. Okay. So text number 29. So I'll just click on that. So Canto 5, chapter 8, text 29. So we will see here, and I will do sort of word by word here. We'll go into the details, and many of you, I mean, if I can understand, many of you can understand as well. We will see how the deer is thinking. This is the deer thinking. These are the thoughts of the deer. So he says, Aho Kashtam. The first line itself, first word, Aho Kashtam. What does it mean? Oh my God, what a miserable. Where have I, what have I done? Aho Kashtam, right? Bhrishto Aham Atmavatam. Bhrishto Aham Atmavatam. I have destroyed, I have fallen down from my Atmavata stage. From such a high stage of self-realization, I have fallen down. What a fool I am, isn't it? Aho Kashtam Bhrishto Aham Atmavatam. Now again, this is prose. So there's no meter here. So I'm just reading the words. Anupathad yat vimukta samasta sangasya. That on this path of self-realization, vimukta samasta sangasya, all the sangha that I had, I gave it up, vimukta. If I had to stay attached, I could have stayed attached to my real child, real wife, real family, real friends. I gave it all up for a reason, right? Like that he is thinking. Vivikta punya aranya sharanasya atmavat. So I came to this punya aranya. Aranya, like in Ramayana, there's Aranya Kand. Aranya means forest. When Lord Ram is going in the forest, that is known as Aranya Kand. So Aranya means I came to this forest. Punya Aranya, this very holy forest. And Vivikta, there is nobody else here. So I wanted to disassociate with everyone. And I came to this Punya Aranya Sharanasya. I took shelter of this holy place. And I was trying to make spiritual progress. Atmavat, Atmani Sarvesham Atmanam. That I was trying to make further spiritual progress of myself, of my self-realization, by focusing on the Atmani, whoever is in the super soul, the Paramatma in my heart, Bhagavati Vasudeve, who is no different than who? Bhagavan Vasudeva. So he says, I came to this solitary forest, left all my real family members to further my self-realization, my spiritual progress, by focusing on the super soul, Paramatma, who is none other than Bhagavan Vasudeva. Are you following so far? And what did he do? So let me kind of show here also. Tad Anushravana. Where is that? Yeah, I'm here. Tad, all these words here. And what was I doing? Now he's listing what all I was doing in my life before I met that baby deer. What was I doing? Anushravana. Now of Bhagavan Vasudeva, I was doing the Shravana of Bhagavan Vasudeva, of his name, qualities, pastimes, form, all those things I was doing Shravana, which is basically means he was performing Krishna Bhakti, Bhakti Yoga. We say Bhakti Yoga means Shravana, Kirtana. That will also come. Anushravana, Manana. I was doing meditation. I was thinking about the Lord. Then I was doing Sankirtana. I was chanting and singing the names of the Lord. I was doing Aradhana. I was doing worship of the Lord. I was doing Anusmaran. I was trying to remember the Lord. And I was performing these acts of Bhakti Yoga. Abhiyogena Ashunya. I was doing all these things with full heart and mind. Sakala Yamena Kalena. 24/7 I was doing. Sakala Yamena Kalena. All the time. Kalena means time. Sakala Yamena means all the time. No break, no gaps. Samaveshitam. Samahitam Katstriyena Mahantat. And then I fixed my mind fully, manah tat. So this man, my mind, I fully fixed on Lord Krishna. But then tu punar. But then again, mama abudhasya. So then he says abudhasya. Out of my foolishness, abudhasya. Buddhi means intelligence, abuddhi means foolishness. So abudhasya aran mrigasutam anu pari susrava. I got attached to mrigasuta. Mrigasuta means child of a or son of a deer. So punah means after doing all these things, after giving up all these association and focusing on Krishna so nicely, I got back into the same, back to square one. This time with a stupid little deer. Aho kashto. What a great, miserable situation. And now I have got this body of a deer. So you can see how he is repenting. So now going back to that first understanding, of course, this was in Bharata Maharaja's case, it was the will of the Lord for increasing his bhakti. And you can see in this verse how in separation of the Lord, his bhakti is increasing, even as a deer. But for us, that is a very high level of understanding. But for us, we must very, very seriously consider, are we in a similar situation? Today, we are all performing Bhakti Yoga, trying to doing our activities of Shravana, Kirtana, Manana, Anusmarana, Aradhana. All of these activities everybody is doing. Most of us are doing most of these activities, correct? But at the same time, are we having our little deers in our life? Isn't it? And then now, while we have the time, not like Bharat Maharaj that in the next life, after he got the life of deer, till his death, he was thinking only about the deer, remember? But now, this is the beauty of Bhagavata Shravana, that it makes us realize, it gives us a knock on the door, wake up, call, to see that we can, are we being like that? Are we squandering away our Krishna consciousness, our bhakti, Krishna Bhakti, and still getting attached to little attachments? And now I can see Mataji here with children and so many others. It's not about giving up the children and all that, but so many other things we are attached to, so many other which we can easily give up, and we should give up. What are the little deers that we should definitely give up in our life? So there are, for example, two things that I want to point out very, very, it's not like, just things that we are doing on daily basis, which are coming in the way of our Krishna Bhakti. The deer in this case of Bharat Maharaj was coming in the way of his Krishna Bhakti. He was doing so many things, Shravana, Kirtana, Anusmarana, Aradhana, all those things he was doing, Manana. And the deer came in the way of that. Okay. what are the things that are coming in the way of our bhakti? So Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Instruction points out one very, very, important thing, which is the propensity to criticize others. For example, we all do that.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So that is the deer. We are so attached to, for example, just as an example, Rupa Goswami says in the 5th verse, every single verse and every single word of every verse of Nectar of Instruction is just packed with importance, with learning. So in the 5th verse, he says, Anya Ninda Adi Shunya Hridam. That should be the goal. Anya Ninda means other people's Ninda. Ninda, you understand? Criticizing others. Ninda Adi Shunya Hridam. It should be 0 in our heart. Not even 1% it should be there. So that is one deer we can give up. So not saying you give up your child, but there are so many things we can give up. And these are the things that are always coming in the way of our bhakti. Another one, for example, is our hunger for pratishtha. Little things. How many of you know this very important verse? All those maybe who are doing Bhakti Shastri. This has not yet come in the Bhakti Shastri batch, which we are doing right now, but Sarvapadhi Vinirmuktam. Remember that? Know that verse? Sarva Upadhi Vinirmuktam. All these upadhis, we have little upadhis, our little domains of, prestige. Oh, this is in my control. This is in my control. Small things maybe in people's control, which they think it is in their control. And then they, gain pride and some sense gratification. Little bit. Internally, you don't even realize, you don't even tell yourself, oh, acha laga, maza aaya. You don't even say that to yourself, but you feel good. You feel like that. So this is very, very important verse. Sarvapadhi Vinirmuktam. And this is the one thing that comes in the way of our bhakti. Rupa Goswami says, Tat Paratvena Nirmalam. So this one should give up all these upadhis. He could have mentioned many other things, but he chose to mention this one. Giving up upadhi, our various upadhis. And with that mood, one should perform devotional service. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. That in that mood, one should try to serve the Lord. Giving up, once by giving up our upadhis, our senses become purified. And with that purified senses, we can do sevanam of Rishikesha. Who is Rishikesha? Krishna. And that is Bhaktir Uchyate. That is called Shuddha Bhakti. So 2 things, Anya Ninda. Adi Shunya Hridam. No Ninda. 2 things. And there can be many other little deers in our life. It's not like you're giving up your child and you're giving by saying divorce to your, not that, that is not even needed. But these are the things we should divorce from. Okay. So we need to find the deers in our life so that we don't repent later. Oh, aho kashtam. What a fool I was to have these little attachments, and now I have to suffer. So that is very important to keep in mind. So we'll read the translation Prabhu, Kripa Prabhuji, you can read this translation, please.
Hare Krishna. In the body of a deer, Bharata Maharaj began to lament. What misfortune I had fallen from the path of self-realization. I gave up my real sons, wife, and home to advance in spiritual life, and I took shelter in a solitary holy place in the forest. I became self-controlled and self-realized, and I engaged constantly in devotional service, hearing, thinking, chanting, worshipping, and remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. I was successful in my attempt, so much so that my mind was always absorbed in devotional service. However, due to my personal foolishness, my mind again became attached, this time to a deer. Now I have obtained the body of a deer and have fallen far from my devotional practices. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Out of my foolishness, abuddhasya. With such a buddhiman person, the whole land is called Bharatvarsh based on his name. And he did such a foolish thing, he says. Okay. So then what happens is that, like this, Bharat Maharaj detached himself from all the deer association also. Deers also have association. So he detached himself from everything. This time, like now he's like, oh my God. And, very determined. And he even gave up the association of his mother deer. Obviously, he was born as a deer, so he must have had some mother deer. He left his mother and went back to the same ashram of Pulatsya Muni on the banks of the Gandaki river. And there he was very, very careful not to fall into any bad association or association of sense gratification, etc. He would eat only dry leaves. He would sit near the, saintly people and hear the katha of the Lord. And like that, he kept passing his time. And finally, he would take bath in the Gandaki river. Like we said, the dog in Vrindavan takes bath in Yamuna. So he was taking bath. Like that, he finally gave up the body of the deer. So that is the end of the second life of Bharat Maharaj. Now starts the third life of Bharat Maharaj. And then after giving up the body of the deer, so here, let me sort of make progress on the PowerPoint. So here he is passing away with the deer next to him. Here we can see he's dying and the deer is next to him. And this is showing how his thoughts have the deer, and then his soul is coming out of the body and going into the body of a baby deer. He's getting a new body of a deer. And then he is, going around, and here it is showing how he is thinking. You can see the deer here, and his thoughts are of how he is lamenting. What a fool I was. So like that, he was lamenting. Then comes the story of the third life of Jada Bharata. So this is chapter 9 of the 5th canto. So we completed 8th chapter. The important verses we discussed, and we discussed how the deer was living and it passed away. So I will quickly kind of recap. There is not enough time to go through the details of 9th chapter, but I wanted to complete it. So in the 9th chapter, it is mentioned how the deer or Bharat Maharaj was finally born as Jada Bharata. So he was born in a very nice Brahmin family. Now this is a sort of a repeat of what we did in the summary class. I'll go over it quickly. And the last 2 verses we will go over in detail. Hopefully we can do all that today. We have another 20 minutes. So in that Brahman family, or maybe not, I have a lot of notes here, I just realized. So anyway, let's see. So Bharat Maharaj was very intelligent, not Bharat Maharaj, the Brahman, let's call Brahman Bharat. Everybody called him Jada Bharat because he was acting like a fool. And why was he acting like a fool? Anybody? Yes. Yes.
Just to avoid attachment with any.
He should not attach with the material world.
But how does acting like a fool make you not attached?
Because no one will come to you.
Exactly. You develop attachment develops also. I mean, you can go to others, but when others come to you,
yeah,
attachment develops. A small baby doesn't know anything. Mother only says, oh, my baby, my little baby, all this. And when the baby grows, it has developed all this strong attachment with the mother and father, because mother and father are all the time, pampering the baby. Isn't it? So when others come to you, also attachment develops, and therefore he was acting like a complete fool so that nobody would be interested in him. So one big area of developing attachments is removed. And this, the verse here says that he was always very, very cautious of association. And since he would not know, he just thought, when Bharat Maharaj thought, I will just save this deer. He was very advanced already. He just thought, I will just save the deer. And how, that little, like one, it's called a slippery slope. You take one step, you think you will come back. What is the meaning of a slippery slope? The slippery slope doesn't say on big letters, I am a slippery slope. It doesn't say that. It means that you think you will take one step and easily come back. But then it sucks you in. So that's why he was very careful not to associate with anyone, because who knows which one may be a slippery slope. The slippery slope doesn't advertise itself, isn't it? So he would not associate with anyone. And this is very, very important. Now, it doesn't mean that for us practicing devotees, or those who are practicing Krishna consciousness from tomorrow onwards, okay, I'm not going to talk to anyone, I will act like a fool. That's not the extreme. Here we are talking about extreme situation. Srimad Bhagavatam, through extreme situation, it gives us the learning of what we should do in our life. But that doesn't mean that we should become as extreme. But the example is very extreme. Otherwise, there are so many examples. These are the extreme examples which made it into the Bhagavatam, the one big journal of Kali Yuga. It's not like making it on the front page of New York Times today on 18th June. Tomorrow there'll be another story on the front page. Day after tomorrow there'll be another story. No, this is the one big journal of entire Kali Yuga. And therefore, Shukdev Goswami handpicked the most important examples and put it in. And the example of Bharat Maharaj was so important, was so stark, that it made it into this one journal that is published only one time in Kali Yuga. So that's the gravity of the situation that made it into the Bhagavatam. So it doesn't mean that we have to be as stark, but the learning for us is that we must very carefully guard our association. Very, very carefully we must be very, very careful who we associate with. We can in fact say that the story of Bharat Maharaj is a story of association. In the first life, he did associate in a wrong way with the deer, got associated and then gone. Therefore, in the second life and third life, he was very carefully guarding his association. So we can say all these three lives are about whom we should give our association to and whom we should not give our association to. So we must be very, very, very careful. Anybody, and the learning that can be here is that anywhere, anybody that we sense is adversely affecting our Krishna consciousness, we should try to limit or, not associate. And anybody who is improving or benefiting our Krishna consciousness, we should associate. But all the time, and things can change also, people can change also, association can change also. It's not everything doesn't remain constant. People change, behavior changes. So all the time we must constantly be evaluating. The primary yardstick in our own heart should be, where is my Krishna consciousness? Is it going up or down? And I think, you can ask how to measure and all, but or it is increasing in the other direction, sense gratification direction. Okay, we must try to limit that and increase our association on the other side. So this is very, very important. And Jada Bharata was being extra cautious by saying, I will just not associate with anyone. That's extreme case. Okay. So his father was a very, very nice Brahman, Jada Bharata's father, but he was very old. And he was very, he could see the advanced nature of his son. But his son Jada Bharata did not even trust his father. Not trust, but like, maybe I get attached to my father. When children are always attached to their parents, but that also is an attachment. Now, this is again extreme case. Okay. So I'm not saying you all should get, create detachment with your parents. If your parents are here, keep calling them, keep caring for them, keep talking to them. All that is good. But he was even detached from his own father, who used to love him very much. And he was trying to teach him few things like Gayatri Mantra and other topics from the Vedas. He consciously would do the opposite. Like he would say, okay, you have to wash your hands after going to the bathroom. He's telling me to wash my hands after going to the bathroom. What he would do to frustrate his father, he would wash his hands before going to the bathroom, but not afterwards. So he would consciously pick things to impose on his father that I am a fool. Don't even try to associate with me. He went to great lengths to give a signal to everybody, don't associate with me. If you try to associate with me, I will make you frustrated by my foolishness, by my so-called foolishness. So like that, he was living his life. His father kept trying. And once again, death arrived at the door of the father, and the father passed away. And he had, so his father had another wife, and in those ages, having another wife was allowed. And he had a lot of step brothers. So he entrusted Jada Bharata in the hands of his step brothers, because he was like a you can say mentally challenged. That's how he would appear, like a handicapped or a mentally challenged child. So please take care of him. And those brothers were abusing him and exploiting him. They would not give him enough to eat. They would just give him all the burnt rice, or the rice that is in the bottom of the pot, that you have to scrape, all that one. and not give him enough, and just make him do a lot of hard work in the farm, do a lot of hard labor. And he was happily doing that. He was like, great, this is good. They don't want to talk to me, I'm happy. They are giving me a little bit to eat, I'm happy in my little bit, and he was very happy like that. Now comes this story of the Dacoits. So one time he was sitting in the forest, not on the forest, in the farm, just guarding the farm, from some wild animals. They will come and eat the crop. So he was just sitting there, to guard the farm from the wild animals. And some Dacoits came. And the Dacoits, so this is a picture of Mother Kali here. So I will explain the story. The Dacoits were, the leader of the Dacoits wanted a son. He wasn't having a son. So somebody just told him that if you sacrifice a human being, a dull human being, then you will get a son. So it is not sanctioned by the Vedas. None of this is the proper way. But people do so many things. Somebody says, or their own mental speculation and all those things. Look at Hiranyakashipu. He did so much tapasya, and finally what he asked, that I should become immortal. And after he got almost that, then what did he do? He just plundered. Is that mentioned in the Vedas, that's the reason why you should do tapasya? No. But demoniac people do that. So this Dacoit was like that. And so he told his people, go get me a person like that. So they were looking and they found Jada Bharata, a perfect candidate for sacrificing. So they captured him. He was totally, he didn't care. Now you see, such a high level of realization. So they brought him, and then, before sacrificing, you have to prepare. So they gave him a nice bath. They, fed him, all those, put nice clothes like that. But in his mind, he knew that he's going to be killed. But he was in fact, happy. Okay, good. I don't have to do more acting for more years. So he was completely self-satisfied. But the Devis and Devatas, in reality, not in reality, I mean, even upfront, they are devotees of the Lord. They know the correct signs. So Mother Kali was looking at all of this in the deity form. She was like, what are these Dacoits doing? They have brought a devotee. And they don't know that, but anyway, they are doing wrong things. Plus, they happened to bring a devotee, a great devotee of my Lord. Mother Kali considers Lord Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, as her Lord. His devotee, they are trying to sacrifice. So it is written that as one of those Dacoits, as he lifted the sword to kill Jada Bharata, the deity split, the deity of Mother Kali. And here you can see, there is the deity, and it's like kind of shown as split. And actually Mother Kali came out. And she grabbed that sword from that hand of the Dacoit, and she killed all the Dacoits. All the Dacoits were killed. Because first of all, they were not devotees of Mother Kali. They were just trying to do a business deal with Mother Kali. Okay, I will give you sacrifice, you give me a son. That is like a, there is no devotion, there is no bhakti there, even to Mother Kali. It is a material desire, and that too a devotee. So these were not devotees of Mother Kali. Mother Kali had no mercy or no this thing. They were just rascals, bad people. So she killed all of them, and that's how Jada Bharata, you can see here, Jada Bharata is sitting here. His thoughts are absorbed in Lord Krishna, and Mother Kali comes and kills all the dacoits, and he gets saved. Okay, so the important thing to the last two verses we will just read and we will conclude today's discussion.
Prabhuji,
Yes.
before that previous photo, that fruit vendor was trying to hit Bharata Maharaj.
No. Let me show again. I don't think so. There is no such.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, maybe yes. Yeah, he's trying to hit Bharata Maharaj because it is mentioned in the Bhagavatam that everybody would consider him like a fool. And what do you do to a fool? You make fun of him, you ridicule him, you hit him also sometimes, right? Chalo yahan se, chalo, bhago, get out. I have customers coming. If you are standing here, you're not even wearing clothes properly and all that, the customers won't come to my shop. Get out. Like that. So yes, they would, and he would be like, yeah, good. People are not trying to associate with me. They are trying to push me away. So yes. But this is just showing sort of this picture is just showing the detachment of Jada Bharata.
Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you. Even the dogs used to bark at him. Okay. So this is chapter 8. We'll go to chapter 9 and we'll go to the end. Just last two verses, we will read the translation. And this, these two verses, what it is saying is that the Lord protects his devotees. Same as Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Na me bhaktah pranashyati. Kaunteya pratijanihi. Na me bhaktah pranashyati. You declare, go and tell everyone, my dear Kaunteya, my dear Arjuna, my devotee, na me bhaktah pranashyati. Nashyati means destruction. Na me bhaktah. My devotee will never meet any destruction. So this is a very, reassuring promise by the Lord that the Lord protects his devotees. So many cases like Gajendra. We will cover that story sometime. So maybe from the room here, I'll request Mataji to read the translations. The two translations. So both are basically, the focus is the Lord protects his devotees, and those who offend his devotees, the Lord is double, triple. He doesn't take that easily. He can take offense to himself with no problem. But when you offend his devotees, then he doesn't take that easily. He becomes very, very angry, and those who offend his devotees have to suffer greatly.
Translation. When an envious person commits an offense before a great personality, he is always punished in the way mentioned above.
So mentioned above means like they were trying to kill the devotee, the Lord made sure they all get killed. And the next one. Yes, Mataji.
Sukadeva Goswami then said to Maharaj Parikshit, O Vishvanatha, those who already know that the soul is separate from the body, who are liberated from the invincible knot in the heart, who are always engaged in welfare activities for all living entities, and who never contemplate harming anyone, are always protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who carries the Sudarshan Chakra and acts as supreme time to kill the demons and protects his devotees. The devotees always take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. Therefore, at all times, even if threatened by decapitation, they remain unagitated. For them, this is not at all wonderful.
Thank you, Mataji. So the devotees of the Lord are never agitated. Wonderful here means that it is not wondrous. It's not like, really? The Lord protects his devotee? It's like assumed, it's very natural for devotees to feel protection of the Lord. like Prahlad Maharaj. His father was trying to kill him. He was very calm. Nothing is going to happen. Or if anything happens, that also is by the will of the Lord. There is no agitation in the mind. There is no anxiety. But the Lord always protects his devotees. So that is the end of the 9th chapter. So we have covered 2 important verses. Most of the 9th chapter was story, which we covered, which is the story of how the Dacoits, how Jada Bharata is born, and how his father was trying to teach him, but he was trying to remain aloof. And then after the passing away of his father, how his step-brothers were mistreating him, and he was completely happy and satisfied in that situation. And then finally, even when the Dacoits capture him, try to kill him, still he was very calm, very peaceful. And finally, the final learning that we get is that, but the Lord never lets his devotee be harmed. The Lord always protects his devotee. So that was the summary of 9th chapter. Then in 10th chapter onwards, which we will cover, there is lot of instruction coming up. He meets this king, Rahuguna, as a palanquin carrier. So that is the story will be there in the 10th chapter. And then the next 3 chapters are discussion between King Rahuguna and Jada Bharata, where he finally gives his association. Then he starts speaking because he finds that this king is a qualified candidate. But he's not taking association, he's giving association. We'll discuss that topic. And then I will select, there are just too many verses to go over. If we keep going through that, it will take 6 months. So I will select just some key verses and go through the teachings of Jada Bharata to King Rahuguna. And that will be the conclusion. Maybe in the next 2-3 weeks, we will conclude this whole topic of Bharata Maharaj, and then we'll see what next. So that is the plan. So next week, we will cover King Rahuguna. Okay, so we will stop here. Are there any comments, questions, or? Okay, if nothing, then we can pause here. There's nothing in the chat also that I can see. So, yeah. There's a question in the room.
So, Bharata Maharaj was in bhava stage, which is very highly elevated state already. So, I'm just curious to know how bhava stage is not sufficient for someone to. And another question is like, is it not a liberated state in itself?
So Prabhuji is asking a question, is the bhava stage not the stage of liberation?
Yeah.
And what else is remaining in the bhava stage? So again, very nice question, and but very deep and question. I have read it in Nectar of Devotion. That is the textbook I would resort to rely on for this answer, where Srila Rupa Goswami gives a description of all the stages of bhakti, and there is a whole chapter on the stage of bhava bhakti and what he says, and there is very beautiful description of the stage of bhava bhakti, some of the very important symptoms and characteristics of the stage of bhava bhakti is given there. I don't remember the full list, but I can share with you what I remember. For example, there are 2 categories, one which is externally visible symptoms, and one, but they can be faked also. So the more important symptoms are the internal ones. And therefore it is not for others to mention, hey, you are in bhava bhakti. Hey, you are not in bhava bhakti. Not for It's not for somebody else to judge you. It's for your own measurement of where you are, because you know what's inside your heart. I cannot, nobody else can see. External symptoms are like spontaneous crying and, the hair standing up, but they can be, some artists can fake it also. But if it is natural, then that happens, but they are never to be shown. It's not a show. That should never be. If somebody is developing such symptoms, he should go into hiding. If he is sitting in public, he should run away and, lock himself in a room and cry for Krishna. So they are the external symptoms. Internal symptoms, for example, one of the symptoms is those who are at that stage never waste even one moment of time from Krishna Bhakti. The minimal things that they have to do for maintaining their body, they do rest of the time. And there are other symptoms. And what Sri Rupa Goswami says is that it is just the maturation, the further maturity of bhava bhakti, which becomes prema bhakti. So there is, I don't recall, at least from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu or Nectar of Devotion, any clear list of differences between bhava bhakti and prema bhakti, but prema bhakti is just called as a more mature stage of bhava bhakti. That's what I can share with you. And in Madhurya Kadambini is another very beautiful scripture written by Sri Vishvanatha Chakravarthy Thakura, where there are certain types of anarthas at each level which keep getting removed. And finally, I again need to look in, my memory is not very good. Some anartha remains at the bhava bhakti level, which completely gets removed at the prema bhakti level. But these are technical points, but I am very, very, very far away from that. So it's like, a person who is trying to learn algebra is, not yet need to worry about how to solve the Riemann hypothesis or the twin prime conjecture. Let me first learn how to solve fractions and open brackets, and you do simple algebra. Then, hopefully in this life or next few lives, I can work on the Riemann hypothesis or other big problems. So that's my level. So yes, it's good to know. And Nectar of Devotion, deep study of Nectar of Devotion can reveal the answers. So I gave you a brief answer, but hopefully the pointer helps. And our authority on this topic is Srila Rupa Goswami.
Jada Bharata is third life, right? So same like deer, like Jada Bharata remembers
Yes.
both his past lives. I mean, that is the reason he's behaving like fool, right? So till at this moment, like, was he doing any kind of devotional service? I mean, till like whatever we concluded today, was he doing any kind of devotional service?
So the question is, Prabhuji is asking, first of all, that did Jada Bharata also remember his past two lives? So I forgot to mention, absolutely yes. It is mentioned in the Bhagavatam. He remembered both his past lives. So he remembered the whole history, how I was the king, I went to the forest, got attached to deer, became deer, now I am this. So he remembered that. And internally, this is another important point. There are just so many points, and you bring up a very good point. So many points to be learned from the Srimad Bhagavatam, that the internal consciousness matters a lot more than the external appearance. So externally, he was just like a madman. Just like in that picture, everybody is trying to shoo him away. Hey, get out. Who wants a, mad fellow in front of your door? So externally, he was not that, but internally, his consciousness was always fixed on the Lord. So yes, internally, he was performing complete bhakti, but not externally.
Prabhuji, he remembered 2 lives. That's why he was careful in 3rd life.
Yes, absolutely. He didn't want any slippery slopes, like we said, in this life. So yes, he remembered, and internally he was fully Krishna conscious. Everything that he had done in this life of Bharata Maharaj and the deer continued. He didn't regress. He was making forward progress towards Prema Bhakti. Okay, so we will conclude here. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We'll see you all next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.